Back with us on the Sports Max Zone. You know, you have big-time journalists who are bad men in their spare time. Anyway, on Monday, 4 of the 6 men who were involved in the beatdown of Grenadian World Javelin champion Anderson Peters pleaded guilty to the charge of causing grievous harm. The 4, 55-year-old John Alexander, 35-year-old Mikhail John, 42-year-old Noel Cooper, and the 28-year-old Cheyenne Jack also pleaded guilty to causing grievous harm to Peters' brother, Kidon Peters. Now, on Monday, the chief magistrate presiding over the matter, Teddy St. Louis, told 45-year-old sailor Lance Wiggins he was free to go, while the state prosecutor had earlier told 40-year-old Abiola Benjamin he had no case to answer. Now, the gang of 4 that pleaded guilty will know their fate when they return to court on Wednesday. 2 days after last Thursday's incident, the captain of the Harbour Master party boat on which the incident happened, Noel Cooper, issued an apologia. In it, he asserted that Anderson Peters was the aggressor. We've highlighted sections of that apologia for you. He said, "On August 10, the crew and I had just successfully sailed the recovery cruise. I instructed the deckhand team to begin preparing the boat for our next cruise, which was scheduled for 8 o'clock. After some time, I went to check on the crew and saw them asking a group of men to leave the ship. My team tried encouraging the men to leave, but again, the group, who I didn't know at the time included World Champion Anderson Peters, refused to leave the ship. Anderson began to get aggressive and pace up and down the ramp. I approached him," the Harbour Master captain said, "and asked him to leave the ship. He cursed at me, disrespected my nationality, and insulted me for being Trinidadian." The Harbour Master captain continued, "I asked Anderson 4 times to leave the vessel, and each time he responded with aggression and cursed at me. What happened next is where the issue started. While on the ramp, I informed Anderson," the captain of the Harbour Master said, "that I was the captain of the ship. Anderson responded by cursing me and throwing water in my face. I tried avoiding further altercation by walking away from him, off the ramp and back onto the main deck. When I got to the main deck," the captain of the Harbour Master said, "I realized a member of Anderson's clan had just assaulted my cruise manager Benji by slapping him in his face. My crew tried once again to get the men off the boat, but they continued to refuse with aggression. All men continued to curse at us. Anderson then spat at me and began throwing punches at my face. My crew and I did not start the confrontation. Anderson and his group did. As any team would, we defended ourselves from the ongoing attack." Now, Noel Cooper, the captain of the Harbour Master, the boat on which Anderson Peters and his brother Kidon Peters were assaulted, said, he ended his statement by saying that as captain, it is his right and duty to protect every life on the vessel, and that he would never intentionally harm another human being. So that is pretty much a synopsis of the apologia sent by the captain of the Harbour Master vessel, Noel Cooper, in describing the events that led to the incident in which Anderson Peters and his brother Kidon were injured. Not an apology. An apologia is a written defense of one's conduct, seeking to justify one's actions. So that's what was published on Noel Cooper's behalf. Now, senior writer at sportsmax.tv, Leighton Levy, has been tracking the story and joins us today. Leighton, good afternoon.
Hey, George. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. So I felt, Leighton, that you know how journalism goes. I took a step back and realized that based on how the story has been covered in most papers, it's as if based on what was seen on the video, many people have already passed verdict and have cast judgment in some respects. It's important for us not to do that because that power lies in the gift of the chief magistrate presiding over this thing. And it was very important to highlight Noel Cooper's apologia about what took place on the boat so that the fair-minded person can have, if not fullness, but a level of completeness of context about what happened. And that's why I felt it was necessary to present his statement. And I'm sure you agree.
Yeah, I mean, Calvin has always told me when I just joined the that there are at least 2 sides to a story, but there are many sides to a story. that bring you closest to the truth. And so this is just another iteration of what actually unfolded on Harbour Master on Wednesday, August 10th.
Yeah.
But the credibility of the apology, as you rightly described it, George, I think loses in its credibility in the statement that he had released, saying that Anderson Peters fell off the boat as opposed to being pushed off the boat.
Yes.
Because that then puts everything that he said into question, whether or not he's actually speaking the truth, because the video clearly showed that Anderson Peters was pushed off the ramp into the water in the harbor. So, I take his statement with a grain of salt here, because if that is a clear untruth, as my grandmother would say. So it puts into question the credibility of the rest of his comments as well.
Yeah, because it's right here. We have that part of the video where, it's clear that Peters was pushed by someone. If this lady's wig were not in the way, we would have seen a clear shot. But there was enough there for us to see what happened. And Leighton, again, it's important, again, the temptation is strong, especially when you see video evidence, not to try this case in the court of public opinion and on our platforms, but to present all the facts so a reasonable person can have information with which to form an impression of a verdict, and then hope that that impression that they form accords with what the judge or the magistrate in this instance actually does in court.
Yeah, absolutely. But the key thing here, George, at the very crux of this case, is the fact that the captain and 3 others pleaded guilty in court on Monday. His justification of the actions is immaterial now to the ultimate decision to plead guilty, because had he had a strong enough defense to present in court, eyewitness accounts, of course, the video itself, I don't think he or the other crew members, especially the crew members, would have chosen to plead guilty unless they didn't want to drag the case.
And there's a question, Leighton, because in the apologia, he asserts repeatedly that there was a group of which Anderson was a part. Now, I'd like to, of course, 2 is a group. So unless you say that it was a 2-man group, I don't see any evidence of anybody as apart from Anderson Peters and Kidon Peters involved in a brawl. So what would happen to the rest of the group? They stood by and watched, they left the boat. So as you say, there are a lot of holes in that statement. I just felt it was,
Yeah, man, absolutely. And you raised a very good, it's one of the points I actually raised in a discussion I had last week after I heard the statement, because having watched the video, and look, the video, we will agree, is just a fragment of the full event that unfolded. So what we got was the ending of that circumstance. But as you rightly say, where are the rest of the guys who the captain asserts, were part of the initial kerfuffle, which eventually unfolded into this dramatic ending with Anderson Peters being beaten and his brother as well, and Anderson being thrown into the water. I suspect that they would not have just stood aside and allowed their hero, because Anderson Peters is an icon in that country, to stand aside and allow him to be abused in this manner. So I don't know. I think the captain is probably trying to make it easier for himself come Wednesday when he stands before the magistrate to face sentencing, because they face a maximum of 5 years and about maybe more than $5,000 EC in fines. Maybe this was a move to try to, ameliorate the situation and have the judge exercise some empathy when he's passing judgment. Passing down sentence.
Well, I can tell the viewers that they can pay attention to Sportsmax's platform, sportsmax.tv, for the news of the judge's decision, the judge's sentence, when it is handed down in court. Do you have an idea of what time they're going to court in the morning, Leighton?
I know. I've tried getting a number for the attorney, but I have not been able to so far.
Okay.
But I suspect it probably be first on the docket. Usually these cases, when it comes to sentencing, it probably is early on the docket. So I'm suspecting maybe 9 a.m. Jamaica time, 10 o'clock in Grenada. Somewhere within that window between then and midday, I think would probably be the most likely time when they're appearing before the judge for sentencing. Yeah,
sportsmax.tv will have you covered where that news is concerned. Now, it was story late, and another story that first emerged late last week. World Under 21 100-meter hurdles champion Kerrika Hill has reportedly gone pro. The decision by the 17-year-old to join the professional ranks means she will forego her last year of high school. Her decision, though, has divided opinion. Many believe she should have stayed at Hydel High and continued to develop her craft while completing this important leg of her formal education. And then some track and field watchers are also a little bit peeved that her handlers only informed her high school coach, Corey Bennett, after the decision to cut short her secondary school career had been made. Leighton, we are talking about this issue right now. Your assessment of the way, well, not only the way it was handled, let's start with the decision itself.
Look, all right, let me just set the stage here. But my own personal opinion on this is that I think maybe college, maybe another year or two before she decided to go pro, but I'm not the person in their shoes making that decision. Huh? Going pro is like walking a tightrope across that canyon without a safety net. Some will make it across, some won't. Some will fall, and of course, the damage will be permanent. So the decision to go pro here by her might be driven by economic circumstances, and I'm not going to tell somebody that they mustn't take a contract that's going to help them to break the cycle of poverty in a particular family, if that is actually the case. I'm not going to tell anybody that they should. The thing is that I'm an old school kind of guy. I actually believe that Karika at 17 is nowhere close. She's 1277 over the hurdles. That puts her in the top 75 in the world. She's going to be competing against the very best in the world. The world record is now 12-12. She's half a second away from those. And of course, you know, I will presume that it's a developmental contract that will see her progress over the next 2 or 3 years until she's 20, 21, where she then renegotiates depending on how well she performs. So my personal opinion is that it may have come a little bit too early, but at the same time, I'm not going to say it's a wrong decision because I think only time can tell.
Leighton, I know, you're a man who is in the track and field circle. Any word on how Coach Corey Bennett has received the news when he found out?
No, I tried calling him, his phone rang without an answer. But I suspect he would be upset. I think one of the things when you look at Corey Bennett's athletes, they tend to be a little bit more prudent in their decisions on when to go pro. When you look at Brenda Liston, for example, she chose LSU. Word is that, she probably would have turned down a contract somewhere along the way because she thought going to school and getting that formal education at the tertiary level was more prudent. Because track and field, like most sports, is a very fickle career. All it takes is one injury, and then what happens? You have nothing else to fall back on. With an education, a college education, you have at least the degree that you can actually transition into another phase of your life. Of course, when you look at Cherokee Young, for example, 2 years at Texas A&M before she decided to go pro. Those 2 years of experience running at the collegiate level in the United States will prove invaluable to her in the years to come. And of course, given the foundation that she has, the chance that she could actually go back to school and finish up that degree if she chooses to over time. So I think Corey would not necessarily be too happy, especially since he heard about it after the fact. I heard about the potential signing a few days before the news actually became public, and was actually told that Corey didn't know at the time that the contract was being signed. So I suspect he would not be a very happy man today.
Right, and one of the arguments, so of course the points that he pushed when asked about, whether she should go pro or not, he spoke about improving her technique, the age that she's at and the amount of work that they still would have to put in to ensure that she reaches that level. What's your assessment on that statement?
Look, she's a brilliant athlete. I think a lot of people talk about the Clayton twins and they talk about Brenna Liston, but I think Karika Hill is probably the most talented of that group, believe it or not. 11-1-6 over the 100, and of course in a technical event, 12.77, beating the rest of the world at 17, tells you that she has the talent. However, she has a lot of cleaning up to do in terms of that technique, and that will take time. And as she competes against the world's best, depending on how her coach now, a professional coach now, decides to handle her competition levels, she could go into her first couple of years of competition with her confidence shattered Because when you look at even in this country itself, you're looking at Megan Tapper, you're looking at Brittany Anderson, 12:31, a new national record. Yeah, there's a whole cadre of young female sprint hurdlers in Jamaica who will render Karika Hill almost redundant in her first couple of years as a pro. So that her confidence is going to be a significant issue in how she handles that process. And she's going to have a very strong management team around her to ensure that she doesn't, run astray when she realizes that she's not going to be able to compete against these ladies who are consistently below 12.5s and 12.4s. And then, as she continues to make her progress. So, yeah, she has a lot of work to do, but based on the talent that she has, if she stays focused and she has a proper management team around her, I think in 2 or 3 years she'll be right there with the very best in the world. The thing is that you don't know. You can only guess as to where her career will lead. You hope for the best because you've seen so many talented athletes come through going pro early and finding success. But for as many as those who have found success, there are twice as many, if not more, who have fallen by the wayside. And Jamaica is replete with examples of those young athletes who went pro early and were unable to make the transition.
Yeah. A critical part of this discussion, Leighton, is Kerrika Hill's age. Now, I suspect that 17-year-olds will vary in their level of maturity. Some 17-year-olds are more emotionally and mentally mature than others, so that would be a factor. But I hear you harping on the event that she is in. So outside of her tender age, I'm hearing you suggest that because the sprint hurdles is such a competitive event globally at the moment, that is a factor that can also influence whether a 17-year-old is thrusted into a pro contract or not.
Yeah, look, at this stage of her career, it could be sink or swim for Kerrika Hill. You're looking at a situation where if she goes up against Toby Amusan and the raft of Americans who are running 12.4s and faster, the Jamaicans, the Europeans, for the first couple of years, she could struggle and most likely will struggle because, these are ladies who are seasoned at this thing. Kerrika, she's a fierce competitor. I give you that. I remember sitting next to her at the character games, and she was peeved that she was not able to compete at the character games. So she has that competitive edge. But getting punched in the face repeatedly can have a different effect entirely, especially when you're going up against the best in the world. And knowing you have a contract riding, or the success of your contract riding on your initial success over the first couple of years. Because I'm sure the shoe sponsors would have understood that her age and realized that she's going to need some time to develop and become the athlete that they suspect that she will become over the next few years. But at the same time, it is going to be down to how Kerrika responds to being punched in the face often enough that it won't erode her confidence and it won't have her lose focus and deciding whether or not, she made the right decision to go pro at 17.
Yeah, Leighton, thank you for your time. We're out of time. Thank you very much for that perspective. We'll check in with you again.
Take it easy, guys.
Break time here on the Sports Max Zone.